Johnny Tremain, chapters 10 through the end. Okay, we're going to contrast some characters here. Chapter 10 has Johnny and Rab is departing to go to war. And we see a lot of emotion out of Johnny and just all over the spectrum. And Rab is his normal, cool, calm, collected self. And what we realize, and maybe even what Johnny realizes at that time, is that Johnny's identity is still wrapped up in Rab. And, he feels like a part of him is leaving. His leadership is leaving with Rab leaving. And he realizes, but, to Rab, there's not that dependence. And so throughout the rest of the book, we're going to see Johnny now completely having to become a man and stand on his own 2 feet. Whereas prior to this, Johnny was basically emulating Rab, had found a good role model and was looking at that and emulating it. And he's ready to be on his own now. We're also going to contrast John Adams and Paul Revere. Back when Otis was giving his "that a man can stand up" speech, he looked at Adams and said, you're going to play your role in this revolution, but you're never going to understand it. And in this chapter, we've got Johnny dreaming that they're boiling lobsters, and the red coats, the British were kind of, a derogatory term maybe were that they were the lobster backs, for their red coats. And we have Adam stirring that pot of these, dying British soldiers, and he's chuckling. Meanwhile, Paul Revere is also stirring that pot, but he's looking away and he's upset at, hurting a fellow man. And so here we have the contrast of somebody who is fighting a good fight for the wrong reasons, still into pride and revenge and taking joy in causing others to be beaten down, and being coming out on top, versus Paul Revere and a humility and a fighting for principles that are good, and seeing that human suffering, even of your enemies, is not a good thing, and things, but doing what he feels like needs to be done. So you have that contrast. So I've mentioned before that all the characters in this book sort of symbolize in one way or another the colonies or Britain. So the next scene we have is where Lavinia is going back to Britain. And Izana has to decide, is she going to stay with Scylla, her sister, who has just always been so loyal to her, or is she going to go with her new Lavinia back to Britain? Izana symbolizes a Tory, and at this point, those loyal to Britain, needed to return to Britain and become completely British. And those that were Whigs were now separating and become, the new colony, the, colonialist, and breaking away. So we have Izana choosing to go back with Lavinia. So the split is complete. She has now become a member of the Light family. And it's kind of interesting. Lavinia is going to turn her into an actress, which, is meant to be seen in kind of 2 ways. That Britain here is just sort of all about the outside appearance and things. Okay. Then we have Lavinia telling Johnny that, yes, you are a light. And even, when this war's over, you can get a bunch of property and that sort of things. And it is so anticlimactic. If Johnny had been his old self, focused on pride and externals and money and himself, this would have been thrilling news. And now he's a changed man into the principles of the new colonies and sees himself as a small part of something so much bigger and so much more worthwhile that he just doesn't even care. And so he has rejected his light citizenship and his British citizenship to becoming a colonialist with their idea. Okay. Then we have Johnny's hand has been a symbol throughout our story, and the story ends once again with this hand. This is a big deal. So first we had that he had such a wonderful silversmith hand, and all this pride and things, and then we ended up with the hand that was disabled, and we've got that kind of in the old British ways. Well, that puts you in the lower class. You have no chance of anything but becoming a beggar off people like the lights and stuff, and that's not going to go well. And then we have where he accepted that he's a flawed man, but has worth and can contribute to colonial society even with this flawed hands. And then now he is able to, and remember, so the whole time this also symbolizes him as a person, okay? So now he is ready to be fully a man, and have his hand fully restored. In the scar tissue from his old prideful, selfish life and the consequences of the way he treated people and things is about to be healed almost completely. That there's probably still going to be some weakness in his thumb. He may not ever be a silversmith, but he will be able to be what he needs to be right now. And then also at this time, we really need to notice that Johnny does not think of himself. He's thinking about how he's part of the colonial society. He kind of says, I'm the, I am the milkwoman. I am the farmer. I am the, he sees his identity as wrapped up in this new cause of this country. Okay. And so there's not a whole bunch of worrying about himself or self-pity or what am I going to do without Rab. He's part of a big picture. Okay. Things to talk about. I mentioned at the very beginning that this book was written by Esther Forbes right after Pearl Harbor during World War II. And she was calling her generation of young men to get ready for this war. And so she says in Johnny's thoughts in the end of this book, basically, this is why I wrote this book. And it's almost like prayer. It says, please God, out of this New England soil, such men would forever rise up ready to fight when need came. The one generation after the other. Hundreds would die, but not the thing they died for. A man can stand up. Okay, and so, think and talk about one generation after another. Is your generation and you in particular, are you sort of fulfilling Forbes' dream back in World War II times of that this New England soil that you are ready to fight if a need comes for you to do it. Realizing that it may cost you, but that way the ideal will not die, So, and you can stand up for things, okay? So for thinking activity, this is just a bunch of questions that kind of get at the heart of some of the big themes of the book to answer, okay? First of all, what is a government? If basically, if you ruled a country, how would you set up the government to be just, fair, best for everyone? What are the basics of that? Okay. What would you do if you were Pumpkin? You got drafted for an army and you did not believe in the cause, or maybe you even felt like you'd rather be on the other side. What are you going to do? Are you just going to do your job, or are you going to desert, or are you going to, what are you going to do? Okay. And then what things are worth standing up for? Okay. What ideas are worth, pitching in your 2 cents? There's some things that sometimes I, have a different opinion on, but just kind of keep my mouth shut. What are some things that we shouldn't? Then to go farther, what are some things worth physically fighting for? Or is there anything worth that? Some people say there's not. Okay? This there should be maybe a difference between these two. Okay? And then what are you going to live and die for that is bigger than yourself? Okay? I think we've read in another book how that if a man doesn't have something that he feels like is worth dying for, then he doesn't have reason to be breathing God's air. Well, how are you going to live life for something that's not just living for other fallen human beings, that's not just living for yourself and your next meal and, a break from work? What are you going to live for? It should be something you would also feel like it would be worth dying for.